Hello and welcome to the MMA Live Chat Show. I'm Rich Davie and it's Sunday, February 9th, 2014. On today's show, we'll be discussing MMA news. Specifically, Jessica I had her last fight against Sarah Kaufman back on October 19th, 2013 at UFC 166 overturned to a no contest for a failed post-fight drug test. On today's show, we have yours truly, Wes Fiorentino, and David Petruitt. Thanks for taking part in another show, guys. I appreciate you all taking the time to be here and joining me to discuss some MMA news. Go ahead and say hello to anybody that might be listening.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
Thanks, Rich. Howdy, everybody.
Okay, guys. Thanks again for being here. Jessica I. She had her last fight against Sarah Kaufman overturned back at the UFC 166 event to a no contest for a failed post-fight drug test by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, and the reason that was initially suspected was to be some sort of a blood thinner for the failed drug test, but there's news starting to surface now. She's tested positive for weed, and Jessica is appealing the test results to have the fight return to a win in her win column, rather than just being put on this, what they're calling probated suspension. She probably should have been suspended outright, as all other fighters who test positive for marijuana are. But as we all know, her fight against Alexis Davis at UFC 170 on February 22nd is still on under those conditions of probated suspension. And what that means is that as long as she's paid the fine levied against her and adheres to the punishment, she will not be suspended. The speculation about the failed post-fight drug test due to marijuana came from a bloody elbow report by Brent Brookhouse. And in Brookhouse's article, he mentioned that blood thinners would not have shown up during a urine test, and most likely blood thinners would not have been prescribed to a fighter due to the potential health risks and things that can happen during a fight. Brookhouse stated in the article that he was told by multiple very reliable commission sources that her suspension was marijuana related, and that started a firestorm on Twitter. And Jessica I was so upset and pissed off at all the comments about her that she closed her Twitter account. But before she did close and delete her account, she made a few comments. I'll read those to you here. Laughing my ass off, just going to smile back and ignore all the bullshit. Y'all can speculate whatever you want. And then she posted another comment, as my dad says, fuck these prima donna motherfuckers, do your work in the cage, peace out everyone, I'm done on Twitter. And then she actually made a comment out towards Brent Brookhouse, at Brent Brookhouse, you're a shit starter. Thanks again, buddy. Hope we get to meet one day soon so I can personally tell you how I feel. And then another comment that she made before she deleted the account, at BigFish042, not some article that has speculation and rumor, come on. The last comment that I have here is at that same fella, at BigFish042, okay, show me the test result. Come on and show me the proof you talk so much shit about. You can't, can you? Nah, I didn't think so. And I don't know exactly what order those transpired in, but right after that she did in fact delete her account, because I follow her on Twitter, and I went to her Twitter page and it was gone. So, any comments on that, fellas?
Well, it's a strange story. I mean, I would imagine that Brent Brookhouse, if he has a legitimate source, he can't just out them, and tell her where, as a journalist, you know what I mean? Even as an MMA journalist, for what that's worth, he can't just go out there and say, where he got all this information from necessarily, right? I mean, there's the whole sort of code of journalism. You can't reveal your sources, especially not publicly like that.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's also we're talking about the Texas Commission, right? So who knows what happened? They're pretty infamous for screwing things up.
Is she a Texas girl?
I'm not sure she's a Texas girl, but I'm pretty sure this fight was in Texas, right?
Yeah, it was.
They're infamous for screwing up fights from the judging aspect, from the reffing aspect.
It seemed really strange, the whole circumstance of events, because I first had read that the fight had been called a no contest, and they never even said why. So then it came out that it was a suspension because of using blood thinners, and then the marijuana thing. So yeah, I just still kind of amazed that she would still be getting her fight at UFC 170, I guess.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, she hasn't been suspended yet, right?
no, she's under that probated suspension,
Right. But that's just
which I've
weird,
never
you know?
even heard of that before. Have you guys?
No, I feel like this
No.
is being made up. This whole story just feels like, everything's being made up as they go, you know? I don't really...
And
It's
why
hard
the
to-
hell did it take 3 or 4 months for them to come to this conclusion?
Well,
That
I mean,
fight happened back in October of 2013.
yeah, and I mean, do blood thinners constitute a win being overturned? I mean, maybe before the fight happened, you say, "Oh, look, you're on blood thinners. That's a health risk." But after the fact, I mean, it's not a banned substance in the sense that anabolic steroids or marijuana would be, right? I mean, so is she the only one that's officially said anything about it being a blood thinner?
I don't know exactly who came out with that, but what I read following all the stories out there yesterday is that she says, well, maybe I forgot to fill out something on some paperwork or something like that. I didn't do this. Cocaine is not my thing. I don't do drugs, So I think what she's doing is trying to say, well, maybe I did forget to put something in the paperwork that led to this being overturned.
Right, but I mean, at this point in time, I mean, if a fight's going to be overturned, I feel like we've had this happen before, and it's always very forthcoming about exactly what happened, right? I mean, we know that Nick Diaz got suspended for marijuana. That was officially announced. We know that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., obviously a boxer, but still, he got popped for marijuana, right? So he got suspended. So why is there some kind of veil of secrecy over this? I don't.
Yeah, why is
understand,
it probated suspension?
It just seems to me like someone screwed up somewhere big time, right? I mean, like you said, this is months after the fact. No one knows what's going on. We've got a journalist saying one thing, a fighter saying another. The UFC, I mean, have they even made an official comment on this other than to overturn her win? Oh, well, the UFC doesn't do that. The commission does that.
Yeah, I don't believe they've made a comment on it.
No, I haven't seen anything on like from their behalf, I guess.
Yeah, well, something conclusive must have happened, or else her fight would not have been overturned. The decision, or her win, I should say, right?
But that's up to the commission.
For her to be so pissed off and take the stance that she did and delete her Twitter account like that, would somebody do that if they were actually innocent?
We've seen tons of athletes do that in the past. I mean, A-Rod did it, right? I mean, the guy I was just talking about, Rafael Palmeiro, did it. Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds is still doing it. You know what I mean? It's all for show. I mean, it would not be the first time we saw something like this by any means.
Yeah, I just have a hard time reconciling that, saying, okay, well, would you put on such a big show and dance like that? But again, you made valid points when you're speaking about the baseball players.
Because, yeah, I mean, fighters have done it before, too.
Yeah.
Look at Chael Sonnen.
Yeah.
And his legal debacle.
Yeah. It's just hard to say because, the UFC actually, not too long ago, I can't remember, I believe it was maybe last April of 2013 or sometime around that era in the fall. What happened was the UFC decided to follow the lead of the World Anti-Doping Agency and changed the way that it tests fighters for marijuana. That was back around, I believe it was in the spring of 2013. And what they said was it's kind of ridiculous to stick to these antiquated rules and laws about marijuana. And they voted to raise the acceptable thresholds of THC metabolites in the blood. Mark Ratner, the UFC Vice President of Regulatory Affairs, encouraged the Nevada State Athletic Commission to change its levels to a more acceptable level, considering the lenient societal perspective and laws changing in the United States about weed. And prior to that, apparently they were successful because the Nevada State Athletic Commission did, in fact, raise the allowable marijuana metabolite threshold that a fighter can have in their system prior to a fight from 50 nanograms per milliliter to 150 nanograms per milliliter, which is an increase of 300%. So, I mean, that was right after the Pat Healy fight, too. So I think it's probably time for the rest of the states and commissions to get on board with this and say, okay, well, with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, it's got to be, higher thresholds of tolerance before you go taking away a fighter's ability to make a living.
Yeah, I mean, they do still have the state and federal government regulations in place to deal with, right? I mean, I think Nevada still isn't on par with a state like Colorado, right?
No, not as far as personal recreational.
Yeah, and certainly not in Texas, I'm sure.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for the girl. I mean, that was her first fight in the UFC, wasn't it?
I want to say yes.
I think so.
But
yeah.
I mean, this case just, I don't understand this case. It just sounds like it was handled very poorly. I mean, like you said, we're talking about this months after the fact. His win was overturned. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm looking at a report from SureDog from February 3rd, this past week, about the decision to overturn the fight, but the win, pardon me, and it doesn't even mention blood thinners. It just says prohibited drug.
Yeah, I believe it was Bloody Elbow or Bleacher Report that came out with the original article that mentioned blood thinners.
Right. Well, Bleacher Report, you're dealing with the fans writing articles. I don't care, how many articles they've written before, right? I mean, they're not. Well, the MMA media in general is still, not up to par with a lot of other major sports in terms of quality of content.
That's why they don't call them MMA journalists. They call them MMA reporters or columnists.
It was only a couple years ago. Do you guys remember a guy named Tomas Rios who used to write for SureDog and Fighters Only magazine?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, he got fired from Fighters Only magazine and from SureDog. It was a bunch of things. I always thought the things he wrote were a little poor, but he got this whole controversy with Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan, I don't remember what fight it was, but he referenced a move called the question mark kick, which is a certain kind of head kick, also known as the Brazilian kick. And Tomas Rios went off on him saying, "Oh, Joe Rogan calling the Brazilian kick a question mark kick is just total cluelessness." And Joe Rogan just totally ripped him a new one, saying, "That's exactly what it's called. What are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about." And it turned out that, indeed, this guy had no idea what he's talking about. And this guy's writing for Fighters Only magazine and SureDog, right? We're talking about, two of the biggest, at the time, two of the biggest, outlets in the business, right? So, they got rid of him really fast.
Yeah, I would say you probably don't want to go up against Joe Rogan if you don't know your shit when you're talking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA.
No, he made himself look like an idiot.
He's got all the media behind him already, so
and he
you
knows
better know your stuff.
Too.
Exactly,
Yeah.
You better know your stuff if you're planning on having a battle of wits with him.
Yeah, there's still a lot of kinks in the MMA machine, so to speak, from all angles. The journalism angle, the commission angle.
How is it that some states and some commissions are able to come out and say XYZ, it was marijuana or it was PEDs or it was steroids? It's kind of odd.
It's not, like I said, the Texas Commission with boxing and MMA, it's pretty infamous for being pretty poor in all aspects, not just the handling of drug tests and things of that nature, but also judging especially, both in MMA and boxing is very infamous, and just the refs that it hires. Yeah, Texas is not really I wouldn't say it sets the bar for athletic commissions at this point in time.
All right, guys. Any other comments on that before we go? We've reached the end of the show.
No, sir. Just keep your head up, yeah. Keep your head up.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Now is the time to wrap the show and say goodbye. So, bye-bye.
Good day, everybody.
See you later, guys.
All right. Thanks for joining me again, fellas.
Yo, thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.